Good morning, and if we've never met, my name is Derrick, and I serve here as the lead pastor. If you're new with us, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We hope that you come again. We're kicking off a brand new series today called Back to School. With a shout, how many of you have kids that went back to school or will go back tomorrow morning? Give us a shout. All right, all right. How many of you are teachers or educators and you've been back to school or will go soon? Let's hear it for our educators. Let's clap them up. Man, back to school brings back so many different memories for most of us. Some things you loved, some things you hated. But we had a little time this morning kicking around back to school memories with our volunteers. And I heard several people say, I loved back to school shopping. And I've never been one much for fashion, but my wife does math a very interesting way. And she was like, hey, I don't want to pay for shipping on the kids' new shoes, so pick out a pair of shoes so I can save on shipping. So I got some new shoes, back to school shoes. It still cost us more money than had to be paid for shipping, but that's mama math. I like it. I like it. Well, our kids went back to school last week on Monday, and we have 3 little ones, and this will be the first year, this is a special year for us, the first year and the only year that all of our kids will be at the same school. Our little one, Aubrey, she started transitional kindergarten. Our 8-year-old entered 3rd grade, Kira, and Blake entered 5th grade, and today Blake turns 11. So, yeah. How many of you were around our church when Blake was born? Give me a shout. Okay, all that means is that you all are getting old. And it's just amazing that kid is already 11. But they're all going to school down the street. Actually, interestingly enough, they're at the school that this church started in the cafeteria of that school, Albert Einstein in South Park. And so it's just a fun year for us. But it wasn't actually a fun start to the week because our kids love school and they were really excited to go back and be with their friends, especially after a couple years of disruption with COVID and all of that. This was like feeling like the first year that's going to be back to normal. And our kids the last several years they've kept their classrooms together as they've moved up through the grades. And so our kids had expectations for the school year that quickly came collapsing on Sunday before school started. We found out on Friday that Blake and Kira had gotten moved to different classrooms, that they weren't going to be in the classrooms with their BFFs. And we were like, oh no. Like our parents' hearts were broken and we didn't know how to break it to them. So we were like, what do we do? Do we tell them early on so they can prepare for it? Or do we just let them walk into their classroom on Monday and deal with it so that we don't have to deal with it? And I don't remember, I think Laurel probably let the cat out of the bag to Blake somehow. Oh no, his friend. He went to go see his friend, dropped something off at her house, and she was like, hey, we're not in the same class. So he came home, devastated on Sunday. We had a chat. And for whatever stupid reason, I said, you know what will make Blake feel better? Is to let him know that his sister is also not in the class with her friends. And I was like, hey, dude, could you just keep it a secret? Don't bring it up. We're going to just see how this goes. And of course, the first words out of his mouth were, dropping a hint that she wasn't in the class with her buddies. And so Monday was an interesting day. They only let us on campus because our little TKer was starting. And so we got to watch our kids' excitement for a new school year turn into fear and trepidation. Kira's so strong, but she's standing there in her line, and she just has tears just below the surface of her bottom eyelid, just holding them back. And we were crushed to see them start the school year that way. And I couldn't wait to hear how their day went. Because our kids are strong, they're resilient, they figure it out. And so I went to pick them up, and of course, pickup was a mess that day. It was their first day back, and there's school construction, plus COVID stuff. It was like, I had to get back for a Makers meeting. We had a Makers all-staff meeting, and so I'm sitting at home on Google Meet, because we dropped Zoom, because Zoom is terrible. We're on a Google Meet, all-staff meeting, and Laurel has plans to take the kids out to ice cream after school with buddies, and My kids wouldn't miss that for anything. And as I'm sitting in this all-staff meeting, Blake walks in the door by himself. And I'm like in a meeting, but not in a meeting, because I see my son walk in the house alone. And I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on? Like turn the screen off for a second. And I'm like, ice cream? Like, you're not going to go have ice cream? He's like, nah, I needed a minute. And this is my extroverted, crazy, 7 on the Enneagram, maybe 6 type son. And he's like, no, I had to come home. And he sits on the couch and he just starts crying, and my daddy heart is just breaking. And sorry, staff, but I was done with the meeting at that point, and I couldn't wait to hear how his day went. And he just needed to get away. He needed to come home. He needed to catch a breath, take a beat. And he knew what he needed. I was proud of him for that. But later on, I took him to soccer practice, and I said, dude, how'd the day go? And he begins, describing everything the way a almost 11-year-old would. And, it's the world's over, it's ending. My friends are all over there, and they're leaving me out, and I'm in this class, and I have these people, they're not my people. And he said the worst part of the day is at lunchtime, I just subconsciously, I went and I sat with my friends at their lunch table. And right after I sat down, the teacher came and said, no, you can't sit over there. You've got to sit over here. We eat together. And what the teacher was saying was, our classroom, these new folks that you've been assigned to and that have been assigned to you, we eat together. And he was like, Dad, I was so embarrassed. I didn't mean to even sit at that table, and I didn't know that wasn't okay. And then I got corrected in front of my friends, and all of a sudden I'm sitting at this table with all these people that I don't want to be sitting with. I want to be sitting with them over there, and the worst part is they're right over there. I can see them with my own 2 eyes, and the world is over. But those words kept resonating through my head as he was telling me the story. We eat together. And so today we kick off this new series, Back to School. And our hope for this series is to really begin to take these things that we maybe learned growing up in school, these phrases or these values even that we learned in school as students, memories that we would all have as we were growing up, and kind of couple them with learning what it might mean to have this teacher-student relationship. As we know, Jesus was the ultimate rabbi. He was a teacher, and if it's true, then what does it mean for us to be students? How can we look at the life of Jesus and at the life of other people in the scriptures and learn a thing or two about this student-teacher relationship? Well, what does it mean for us to be great students? And what can we learn from these scriptures? And so today, the catchphrase that we're going to use to help shape this conversation is, we eat together. And we even have a little gift for you guys each week. We got little swag. Today is actually a bag. But for the next several weeks, we'll have little things to take home as mementos to kind of help reflect on and remember the things that we are talking about. And so on your way out today, you can get one of these reusable snack bags. And to be honest, I'm not really a fan of reusable snack bags. But Pastor Shalise is, to the point where she dropped food off for our young adult camping trip last weekend. She had red onions in this reusable bag. And they were the stinkiest red onions I had ever smelled. And I was like, there's no way she wants this bag back. And then I thought to myself, I know Shalise pretty well. She probably does. And so I kept the bag. I brought it all the way home from the mountains to Shalise's house. And I was like, you don't want to keep this bag, do you? She's like, of course I do. So it's good to know that we have a pastor who's committed to saving the earth. Can we clap Shalise up for that? But these bags are meant to be a reminder for us of what we're going to uncover and unpack this morning. And we see this idea, we eat together. We see it in the life of Jesus, of course, right? We see it as Jesus journeys with those that he's calling to follow him. And so many of the conversations and moments where he teaches them is centered around a meal. He literally creates food out of a bunch of food out of a little bit of food. There's always meals happening. And Jesus is always essentially inviting himself into other people's homes and eating their food. And food is kind of a centerpiece, not just in the life of Jesus, but in the life of humanity, right? We have to eat. And the goal would be that we eat together, that this is a thing that we should be doing. But who are the we? Who are the we that we should be eating with? Who are the we that we should be sharing a table with and a meal with? And not only do we see it in the life of Jesus, but we can find it all over the entire story arc of the Scriptures. In these little nooks and crannies of the Bible, in these little obscure places, these lesser known people. But we don't need to even look to the Scriptures to have this understanding that we all have this innate, God-designed desire for community, for communion, for connection, for one another. And I think oftentimes we think that God designed us, that we go all the way back to the beginning and we hear, it is not good for man to be alone, and so God creates a companion for him. And it's true. But I think if all we do is believe that companionship or community is to help us deal with our loneliness, then I think we're missing something. Because companionship and friendship not only helps us deal with our loneliness, it helps us deal with our selfishness. It helps us learn what it means to put the needs of somebody else before our own, to have someone else all up in our business, poking at and rebuking and helping shape and form who we are becoming in that process. And so I want to go to this really obscure story this morning to help us unpack what this might look like for us. There's a story kind of buried in 2 Samuel with a very well-known guy and a very unknown guy. There's a king named David that many of you know about. You've heard about him, you read about him, you grew up learning about him. But even if you didn't grow up in church and have never read the Bible, you probably know the story of David and Goliath. The lowly shepherd boy who defeats the giant with a sling, and it's just this amazing story. And if you don't know much about King David, he is this obscure guy that comes into greatness. He was the overlooked, lowly one, not thought of to be the next one in line to become the king, but he has all these moments in his life, and he has some great moments when he defeats the king. And the scriptures say that he's the man after God's own heart. He loves God. Guy named Ittai. Anyone ever studied this man in the room? Yeah, I hadn't either. It's this really fascinating interaction that takes place that I want to help shape our conversation this morning. A little context. David is the king at this point in the story where we're going to enter into. He's the king of Israel, and he has several sons. His third son, Absalom, he's the prettiest of them all. He has this long, flowing hair like Pastor Mark. When I read this story, I think of Pastor Mark. He's everyone's favorite in the land. I think of Pastor Mark. He's just stunning. He's actually David's favorite son. And there's, if you've ever been the favorite, that there's some interpersonal stuff you've got to deal with along the way. And at some point, he decides it would be a good idea to just overthrow his dad and take over the kingdom. And so there's a moment in this story where Absalom he's already killed his brother because his brother raped his sister, which is wild, I know. And this stuff's in the Bible. If you think the Bible's boring, just read it. And Absalom is coming to take over the kingdom. He's coming to overthrow his father. And this is where the story picks up in 2 Samuel 15. It says, a messenger came and told David, the hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom. Remember, long flowing hair, attractive, he's got it all. It says, then David said to all of his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." And the king's officials answered him, "Your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king chooses." And so the king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So the king set out with all the people following him, and they halted at the edge of the city. I can only imagine what it's like to be on the run from your son, to be abandoning your kingdom. And he pauses at the edge of the city, and he probably looks back, and he's wrestling with this favorite son coming to take his kingdom and even his own life. It says all his men marched past him, along with all the Kerethites and the Pelethites and all the 600 Gittitites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before him. And the king said to Ittai the Gittite. Now, a little bit more context. Who are all these fill-in-the-blank-ites? These Kerethites, these Gittitites, these Pelethites. There's a lot of ites going on in this story. Who are they? I think it's fascinating to kind of take another look back. And there's a different moment in the life of King David where he was also running for his life. He had yet to become the king of Israel, and he was on the run from King Saul, who wanted to take down David because he was a threat to him and his kingdom. And so David escapes to the least likely place they would look for him, Gath. Gath is the home of the Philistines. David had previously killed the favorite Philistine, Goliath. So the last place you think you would run to is the place of your enemies. But he has an even greater enemy, King Saul, an even mightier guy that he's running from. And so he goes and he hides in obscurity and he takes cover in this land of his enemies. And somehow, some way, David, being David, he earns the favor of the king of the land of Gath, to the point that the king ends up giving him his own town. And with that, he assigns to him mercenaries that will guard and protect him. These mercenaries are the Kerethites and the Gittitites and the Pelethites. These are tribes of the Philistine land that the king had gifted him. And all these years later, as he had moved into becoming the king of Israel, these ites came alongside him, and they were with him all of the years leading up to this moment. They were essentially his secret service. They were loyal and they were faithful to King David. And all these years later, I think it's approximately 30, 40 years later, they had been with him, serving him. And as David goes on the run for his life, they come with him. But it says that the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why should you come along with us? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner and exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday. And today shall I make you wander about with us when I do not know where I am going? Go back and take your people with you. May the Lord show you kindness and faithfulness." Isn't David a good guy? He's like, man, I'm about to go through some stuff. Save yourself. I don't want you to go through this with me. You owe nothing to me. You showed up yesterday. I don't want to expose you to this. I don't want to bring you through this. I'm the king. This is an order. Go back to the safe place. But Ittai replied to the king, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there will your servant be." And David said to Ittai, "Go ahead, march on." So Ittai the Gittite marched on with all his men and the families that were with him. It wasn't just him. He wasn't just saying, "Here I am, put me in, coach." He's saying, "I'm coming with my people. All of us, my family and my people, my men are with me, and we are coming with you." It says the whole countryside wept aloud as the people passed by. And the king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on toward the wilderness. What an obscure story. An obscure man, Ittai, the Gittite. What possibly could he teach us that we should eat together? First, I think the one thing that jumps out to me is this idea that jumps off the pages is that the teacher isn't always who you think it is. The teacher isn't always who you think it is. I mean, when you read this story and you know, like, all of the stuff that makes David, the man after God's own heart, the musician, the guy who is the king of Israel, clearly he should be the teacher. And Ittai, this unknown man who showed up yesterday, what could he have to teach David? What could he possibly teach us? But here we see this role reversal, this Daniel's son becoming Miyagi. This moment where this unknown guy is about to teach the king a lesson, and maybe he can teach us one too. See, here's this guy, Ittai, about to teach the king a lesson about loyalty and faithfulness. And I wonder, as we think about this story, was Ittai more loyal and faithful to David or to God? We don't know much about him. There's not a whole lot said about him. It does say that later on that he gets promoted to become kind of the general over David's armies, and there's favor put on him. But we don't know much about his history. We could assume that he was not a worshiper of Yahweh growing up. He came from the land of the Philistines, and we don't know much about him. But he says, as surely as you go, I will go. As long as the Lord is Lord. And so he has this devout commitment to something. It could be God. He maybe has become a worshiper of Yahweh because of David and his influence over his people. Or maybe he is just faithful to David, which would be interesting because he barely knows him, but he has a sense of duty and responsibility. But perhaps maybe one of the things that he's the most faithful and most loyal to is an assignment. He's been given an assignment. He's been called into something. All of us, we spend all of our lives trying to figure out what's our calling. What are we called to? And essentially what we're asking is, God, what's our assignment? What have you put me on this earth to do? Who am I here for? Who am I here to be? And this guy, Ittai, is resolute. He knows exactly what he's supposed to do with his life. Come life or death, with you, King, I will go. There I will be. And I'm imagining what's happening in the heart and the mind of King David as he has this guy who's so loyal and so faithful to him that he did no reason to deserve it or to earn it. There was no established trust with this guy, but he's here for it. And he's teaching David a lesson. He's teaching us a lesson about what it might mean to be faithful and loyal to an assignment. As surely as the Lord lives, and as my Lord the King lives, wherever my Lord the King may be, whether it means life or death, there your servant will be. Do you see his resolve, his conviction, his commitment? I think another thing that jumps off the pages is oftentimes, if we're honest, we see ourselves as the teacher. Kind of like King David, right? Like, I probably have a thing to teach you, right? Especially if we're raising kids or if you're a boss at work. Maybe you're a teacher or an administrator. Maybe you've got some people under your purview. And I think what I'm learning from this story is it's foolish of us to think that we always sit in the place of teacher. How foolish it is of us to think that somebody who just showed up yesterday might not have something that they can teach us. And do you see the humility of King David taking place in this story? He is the king. I don't care if he's on the run. He's pretty sure he'll come back. If you know the rest of the story, he comes back, his people win, his son dies, and he stays the king. He's the king. Any of you, I'm a captain in the fire department. When I say something at work, I expect it to get done. I'm the lead pastor of this church. No one does a freaking thing I say. But you ever had that posture? I'm the mom, I'm the dad, I'm the boss, I'm the teacher. But we see this transaction taking place. It just takes one little bit of pushback. David says, go back, save yourself. This is a directive. It's a direct order. And Ittai pushes back. And he says, no, I don't think this is the way this is supposed to go. And David goes, continue on. Do we have that kind of humility in our hearts to let the guy who showed up yesterday to be the one to teach us a lesson? This idea that we eat together, it's a metaphor, it's symbolism, it's an invitation for us to flatten these hierarchies that we have created. And instead of there being a tree or a ladder to climb, there's just simply a common table. A table where regardless of your status or your stature, that you can sit and have a meal with the guy who showed up yesterday. Invite that person into your life perhaps to teach you something maybe that God was trying to teach you and you weren't listening. This we together mindset, this flattening concept, is this idea that we can learn from one another. That God can use any and every one of us, regardless of our history, regardless of our wounding, regardless of the chaos we've created in a different context. We can learn from one another. And we see this humility, his directive to Ittai, it's redirected, and he doesn't fly off the handle. He doesn't send him away. He doesn't banish him. He doesn't murder him. He says, maybe you're right. Maybe you see something that I don't see. And another thing that jumps off the pages to me, and this one really, I wrestled with this for a little while, is this idea that loyalty and commitment, it doesn't only come from having a history with someone. Do you ever believe that lie? Like the only way that you can be loyal to someone or be committed to someone is if you have a proven history, a track record. Like we go deep. We have this idea that to be thick as thieves, we got to have this deep history. But we see in this story, Ittai had just arrived yesterday. And we also see this in the story of the disciples in the New Testament. As Jesus invites them to follow him, they don't know who he is from Adam. They just have this conviction and this belief that he is this guy worth following. They have no depth. They have no history. Only a trajectory. And they say at this moment when they drop their nets and they choose to follow Jesus, that maybe it's not a history that makes you loyal to someone. Maybe it's your loyalty that can create history. Maybe it's not a sense of depth that allows you to move into a place of faithfulness and loyalty and commitment to one another, but maybe it's your commitment to one another that can lead to this sense of depth that you've never learned before, never known before. Ittai had just arrived yesterday. And so Blake is sitting at that table on Monday. His assigned table. And across from him are his preferred people. You ever do that in your life? You're only faithful, only committed, only loyal to your preferred kind of people? You've got some people sitting right here at the table with you, and you're just overlooking them at the people you wish were with you? What if our assignment, what if our calling in life wasn't a job or vocation or a career? What if our assignment was just the people right in front of us? The people that have been assigned to us, whether it was from your principal or your teacher or maybe God himself. I mean, could it be that God, the creator of all things, could be so in charge that he providentially moves through administrators and teachers and bosses to put us together in ways that we would never have put together ourselves? That you showed up into a church context like this with people that you don't know, that if you allow yourself, you might experience a depth of friendship that you've never experienced before. Look around. These probably aren't your preferred people. But are they your assigned people? Are you assigned to say yes to a depth of friendship and relationship with the people that you've been assigned with? It doesn't mean that you can't stay homies with your friends at the other table, Blake. We know this, right? But you've got a table that you've been entrusted with for this school year. We have a table that we've been entrusted with. Maybe it's for a week, a school year, an assignment. Could be for your life. Could be that crazy uncle on Thanksgiving that you don't want around. Could be that in-law that you can't stand. Could be that boss. And we see that there's a commitment here that a tie makes from the outset. It's the difference between bestowed trust and earned trust. We mostly operate in an environment, in a world where we've got to earn one another's trust. And if you're like me, you have got to earn my trust. You know why? Because I've been hurt. I've been wounded. My trust with others has been broken. And so we put up these walls and these safeguards, and we go to these places of sense of security because we have a depth of history with someone. And we make people prove themselves to us. But there's this actually really beautiful way that we can live where we can bestow our trust to one another. We can bestow our trust. We can give the benefit of the doubt. We can assume the best in people. And the crazy thing is that if we can move into that kind of lifestyle, into that kind of relationship with other people, it actually creates the environment where actual commitment and faithfulness can really begin to grow into something beautiful. A sense of team, a sense of camaraderie, all of that stuff that we hope happens in our environments, in our family, or in our church, or at work. You want a recipe for that? You want soil that creates that? Bestow your trust. The Ittai didn't know if King David was going to lead him into ruin or not, but he was faithful to him. And dude showed up yesterday. And so what if instead of depth leading to faithfulness, our faithfulness led to depth? What if the we in the we eat together aren't only those people who we had a history with, aren't only those that have earned our trust, but maybe it's those that have been assigned to us? Maybe that's our calling. To create a table big enough, open enough, inviting enough for the guy who showed up yesterday. Or maybe you're the one who showed up yesterday. Maybe you showed up today and you're like, I don't know about these people. Take a risk. Pull up a chair at the table. And so here's the invitation this morning. We eat together. Who's the we? Can you open up space in your life to include some folks that you wouldn't normally choose? Could you have enough boldness and courage to show up to someone like Ittai did and say, "No, I'm your guy. I'm your girl. You don't even want me here. You're trying to send me back, but I'm here. I'm going to be your shadow. I'm going to make you better. You ain't going to like it, but here I am. And you know, the truth of all of this is living a life like that is actually impossible on our own power. The stuff that we're going to talk about in the rest of this series and the stuff we talk about every Sunday is the stuff that's only made possible through the power of a loving and a living God. We can't do this on our own. We can't be that unselfish. We can't be that inclusive. We can't be that bold. But I love that at the end of the entirety of the scriptures, there's this phrase, and we use it often, but it's so powerful. And Jesus, he says this. He's got this we eat together posture. Revelations 3:20. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and I'll eat with that person and they with me. And you know what happens when we invite Jesus in to eat at our table? He expands our table. He makes our table so, you know that scene in the first Batman where he's like sitting on the other end of the table? No one knows that movie. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. See, when we say yes to Jesus, when we choose to follow Jesus with our lives, he makes our table big. And we as Jesus people, you know what we do? We eat together. And we invite other people in, even the person who showed up yesterday. Would you pray with me? God, we need your power to live like this. We need your power to live like this. We need each other to remind us that this is the way of your kingdom. God, not where we just live in a world with our preferred people, but God, we respond to the folks that you've entrusted with us, where we see our assignment to be those with an open table, to invite others in, regardless of our depth of history, God, to bestow our trust, even if we've been hurt. God, may you remind us that we eat together. And God, I pray for anybody in the room, anybody watching online that has never opened that door that you say that you will come through and eat with, if they open it. God, I believe there's some people here this morning that need to open the door of their hearts and their lives to you. And so, Jesus, I just pray if they're in this room, God, that they would just have a sense, even right now, of their door to their life opening to you. That they would feel your presence of you coming to sit with them. I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Hey, we're going to stand and sing one more song, and our prayer team is available in the back. We would love to pray with you. Whatever came up for you, or whatever's going on in your life, we'd love to pray for you. And especially if you're interested in opening your life to Jesus and welcoming him in, we would love to do that with you as well. Would you stand and sing with us?